'Tis Monday, woot woot, Monday, and get down from that. Sorry, I had to tell my kitty to get down from the shelf with the TV. We're on chapter 4. We're on chapter 4 of Reaper Adventures Imprisonment, which is the second book of my Reaper Adventures series. And as you could tell, I kind of changed the cover of that a little bit. Just a little bit. And it's book number 2, which is Reaper Adventures Imprisonment. And I still say that with so much joy. Anyway, it's really not very joyful, but that's beside the point. Moving on. Soda. I'm telling you, soda's the best. Well, actually, coffee's the best. Anything caffeinated is the nectar of the gods. Moving on. Don't bring your kids. This is not a kid-friendly story, so just don't bring your kids. It's not like there's sex scenes or curse words in here, but there is mentions of torture in this chapter. There's a scene of torture. There's murder scene of multiple angels by another angel. And then the eventual escape from Eden's prison, as well as the introduction of three new characters who you really don't want to meet in the middle of the night. So, yeah. Don't bring your kids. There's a lot of violence, which kind of sucks. But anyway, moving on. We're on chapter 4. Chapter 4! It's Monday! It's not a very long... I don't think it's a long chapter, but that's beside the point. We'll find out. We're on chapter 4. Woot woot! So let's move on to chapter 4. Payne woke the following morning after a restless night. Nightmares had plagued his initial good dreams, and he had woken on more than one occasion with a sore throat and no recollection of what he had dreamed of, just a horrible feeling of impending doom and imminent dread. Because night terrors do that to you. Payne had just woken from such an episode and slowly gained his bearings as he sat up, shaking with terror and cold sweat trickling down his forehead and drenching his skin as he sucked in deep gulps of air. Because, night terrors, they do that. Woot woot. I hope she's not getting into trouble. He noticed Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order outside of his cell. The terror that had already been there morphed into something unidentifiable and overwhelming. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order recognized the pure panic and desperation that spread across Payne's face and studied him. She decided to allow Payne to calm down before bringing him outside of Eden's prison. If you recall, in the last chapter, they were going to bring him outside of Eden's prison to perform a session of torture to attempt to draw out the Nephilim's father, the Nephilim being Payne. So, excuse me, I burped. That is what is occurring. She turned her attention to the demon, who was watching her with an amused expression. He's not going to let you take him, the demon stated with a smirk. Why is that? Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order questioned with narrowed eyes. Typical human night terrors, the demon replied with an indifferent shrug. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order became confused, and the demon sighed with slight exasperation when he realized that Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order had absolutely no idea what a night terror was, or what a nightmare was, or even what a dream was. After all, Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order was an angel. Principality or not, she was an angel and had never been human in nature. Human emotions and human functions, as well as human minds, were completely foreign to her. Any human aspect was unknown to her. A nightmare is a dream that fills humans with fear. A night terror is similar to a nightmare, but worse, the demon attempted. This only served to confuse Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order even more. Screw it, you'll never understand. The demon sighed with frustration. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order narrowed her eyes as the demon's tail twitched like it always did. She wondered if he was even aware of the fact his tail was like a cat's tail. Though not in appearance, it certainly acted like a cat's tail. I don't know what song's playing, but I know a song is playing. Is there something else you wanted? The demon growled as he glared at Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order. No, Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order answered, and turned to Payne's cell again. He was calmer now, no longer terrified, but still obviously nervous. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order entered Payne's cell, and the chain of Enochian seals appeared around his neck. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order held the chain and made sure Payne's wrists were bound with the shackles of Enochian seals. Payne glanced at the shackles and felt his unease begin to shift to fear. Yes, that is what it says there. He turned his attention from the shackles to Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order and gave her a confused look as he lifted his bound wrists. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order paid him no mind, and Payne reluctantly followed her out of his cell. He froze, though, when one of the Keepers of Peace lifted an executioner's hood to put over Payne's head. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order tugged on the chain. Payne had anticipated this and did not allow himself to stumble forward. Instead, Payne grabbed the chain and yanked it from Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order's grip and wrapped it around the throat of the Keeper of Peace with the executioner's hood and began to squeeze. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order and the other Keeper of Peace instantly sprang into action. Payne let go of the Keeper of Peace, struggling to free himself, and prepared himself to fight. As prepared as Payne was, he didn't expect the Winged Angel's wing to ram into his gut. Ouch. Ow. That actually gotta be painful, because swan's wings are actually capable of breaking bones if they hit you in the right spot and hard enough, so... oof. Anyway, moving on. Payne instantly doubled over, winded, and retching the contents of his fruit-based dinner last night. In reality, it was nothing but acid he was vomiting, because that would have been done and over with by now, but yeah. Payne realized this when the burning was more painful than upchucking regular food. The Keeper of Peace had moved when he felt Payne double over, and was watching with an expression of disgust as Payne finished heaving the acid from his stomach. I mean, if you get something rammed into your gut, sometimes it does instantly wind as well as make everything just kind of... bleh. Payne had finished wiping his mouth with his hoodie sleeve and sucked in a painful breath of air. Payne released his breath just as Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order put the executioner's hood over Payne's head, tightening the rope and guaranteeing that Payne would be unable to remove the executioner's hood by reinforcing the rope with Enochian seals. There she is. Hello, crazy kitty. I love my kitty, though. Payne vainly attempted to remove the executioner's hood from his head, hating the harsh, ragged gasps of air as desperation began to settle in his stomach and seep into his veins, spreading through his body like a slow freeze. Humiliation followed the desperation, and rage was close behind the humiliation. See, I won't be able to get it right unless I'm feeling it. Yeah. So we're just going to say it in the best voice possible. If I can do that. Get it off, Payne exclaimed. I tried, hating the humiliation and desperation that rang clear in his voice. What you insniffigating there, Miss Pooftail? Blackberry. Moving on. Niall, Anala, take the hood off of him. Niall, make sure he follows. Anala, find out why it caused such a strong reaction, Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order told them. Niall glanced at the Nephilim, and a brief frown flickered across his face as his sister Anala removed the executioner's hood from the Nephilim. Tears of humiliation and fear had already begun to flow from the Nephilim's eyes, and Niall waited for Anala to find out why the Nephilim had reacted so strongly to the executioner's hood. You better not play with those wires, Missy. Moving on. Niall was shocked as to the Nephilim. Shocked. Niall was shocked to hear the Nephilim's reason, that makes more sense, for the reaction. You do not like the dark? Niall repeated with surprise and confusion. Don't you dare cut off on me. You make it sound stupid. the Nephilim mumbled as he kept his gaze averted from Niall, Anala, and Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order. Niall was silent, and as Anala and him studied Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order, waiting for the orders of whether or not the executioner's hood should remain off or be put back on. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order knew the tears of shame that were slowly fading had been real. So had the desperation and rage that had only been briefly glimpsed. She knew that every individual of the Angelic Order would know of the Nephilim's torture outside of Eden's prison. I hate when it does that. She also knew that if she placed the executioner's hood over the Nephilim's head again, she would be unable to complete her orders. The executioner's hood will remain off, Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order told Niall and Anala. Anala handed Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order the executioner's hood, and Niall made sure the Nephilim followed Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order. Niall? Payne asked as he looked at the male angel, making sure he followed Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order. Niall blinked and looked at Payne with his turquoise eyes that any body of water would be jealous of. Yes, Niall. Payne was relieved he had guessed correctly, inquired as he raised an inky black eyebrow in a perfect arch. I'm sorry for trying to choke you out. Payne apologized. It is a reasonable reaction when faced with your fear, Niall stated with a shrug. Whether you think it's reasonable or not, it was uncalled for. I just wanted to apologize for it, Payne mumbled. Niall blinked and studied Payne, feeling the all-too-human emotions of regret and remorse. Then I accept your apology and apologize in advance, Niall said. Payne looked at Niall with confusion. My sister and I have been ordered to torture you when we reach the outside of Eden's prison. The entire Angelic Order is waiting, and they hope your father will reveal himself, Niall explained as he forced himself to remain looking at the Nephilim. A confusing mix of emotions crossed the Nephilim's face, all of them replaced by horrible realization and resignation. Niall couldn't bear to continue watching the Nephilim and glanced at his sister, who was having the same trouble he was. They reached the door before the Nephilim spoke again. Thank you, Payne whispered to Niall. Niall looked at Payne with confusion. For letting me know what's going on. Payne continued softly. I accept your advanced apology, Payne said in a barely audible voice as the door opened and Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order led the Nephilim to the platform where Niall and Anala were going to torture the Nephilim. Yeah, we're almost done with chapter 4, so there is a scene of torture coming up, just forewarning. Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order greeted the angels, archangels, and principalities that had gathered to see Niall and Anala torture the Nephilim. Niall and Anala checked the tools, made sure the hoods were up, and made sure the chains held the Nephilim in place and that he was securely fastened after removing the Nephilim's hoodie and shirt. Because you can't very well torture someone who's actually fully clothed. So, that kind of actually sounds really bad. But it's true! They allowed the Nephilim to continue wearing the bracelet. Don't you go up on top of that shelf. They allowed the Nephilim to continue wearing the bracelet he always wore, and then Anala began the session of the Nephilim's torture. None of the members of the Angelic Order that had gathered flinched, cringed, looked away, or spoke. The Nephilim did not flinch or whimper at first. Anala had used her tools and had begun to clean them when Niall took over. Niall took note of the golden spiritual energy that had begun to slow and healing. Get down off the table. Oh, she wasn't on the table. My bad. Niall took note of the golden spiritual energy that had begun to slow and healing the Nephilim's wounds. Oh, fuck. I forget the name of the band, but I do know the name of the song is called Don't Pray For Me. I think it's a new band. Nephilim's wounds. Niall began his session of torture and soon heard a soft, high-pitched whimper. One that the gathered members of the Angelic Order more than likely didn't hear. Niall knew that the Nephilim wouldn't be able to hold back his screams for much longer. Every time Niall drew blood, the Nephilim gave an unwanted whimper, flinching as tool after tool bit deep into the Nephilim's skin. But actually, that's gonna suck. Ouch, that sounds painful. Soon the whimpers turned into airy screams as the Nephilim continued to attempt to hide the agony he was experiencing. Niall put the bloody tool down and picked up his cattails whip. It had 7 ends to it, and each end was tipped with serrated and barbed metal point. That fucking sucks. Sorry, excuse my potty mouth. Niall studied the cattails whip, wishing it wasn't the only unbloody tool at his disposal. Niall held the whip as he turned his attention back to the Nephilim, the cattails whip in Niall's hand. There was the delayed murmur of the members of the angelic order that had gathered, the murmur of sudden and growing horror with mild disgust. Niall steeled his unsteady nerves and steadied the slight tremble in his hand, took a breath, raised his cattails whip, and let the whip crack, laying the Nephilim's back open as Niall released his breath. "Hello there, Missy. Don't you get into trouble on that bookshelf." "Thank you." Moving on. There was the horrible silence of everyone holding their breath in anticipation as the Nephilim's sharp breath was released in a mixture of a whimper and an anguished plea of a scream. Boop, boop, boop. Niall raised his whip again, knowing without having to see the Nephilim's tears, that tears had sprung unwanted to the Nephilim's eyes. There was another murmur, another anticipatory silence that was broken by the Nephilim's scream. He was no longer able to hide his anguish as his back arched, the golden spiritual energy slowly swirling around the deep gashes that Niall's whip created, trying to heal the wounds made and only slightly succeeding. Before the Nephilim's spiritual energy faded when Niall's whip tore the Nephilim's back open again. Ouch. That's all I'm gonna say. Payne heard himself scream again and felt his legs give out as the metal points of the whip tore not only his skin, but his muscle, making it extremely difficult to focus. I can English, I swear, I'm usually not too good at it all the time. Native language or not. That's weird. Moving on. Making it extremely difficult to focus on trying to heal the wounds created. There we go. Hello, Missy. Tears were streaming down his face and sweat coated his skin, stinging the wounds and causing Payne to writhe slightly and whimper. Salt holds a bit of... Sweat holds a bit of salt, which when in wounds it stings, so that's why whenever you're sweating and you're wounded it stings like an SOB. Anyway, he knew he wouldn't be able to heal himself until after Niall and Anala were told to stop, and Payne had no idea when, or if, that was going to happen. I told you to behave up there! Little brat. Or if that was going to happen. The whip cracked for more than Payne was able to count before it finally stopped. Payne's throat was sore, and he knew his back was torn to shreds. Oh, Neone. I'm not sorry. It's a good song. Payne's throat was sore, and he knew his back had been torn to shreds. Don't you go up on that TV counter. No, you know better. Payne would have collapsed to the platform if it weren't for the chains. He was unable to stand, though, and unable to see through the tears and sweat blurring his vision. Hey. Sorry. Night began to fall when Princess Ariel of the Angelic Order said something. The blurred and darkened members of the Angelic Order took their leave, as Niall and Anala brought the Nephilim back to his cell. Thank you for behaving. They were to treat his wounds, make sure he fully recovered, and then wait a few days before the sessions were to occur again. The Nephilim's father had not revealed himself after all. And that is the end of Chapter 4. Chapter 5 is extremely short, but I only upload one chapter every week, so yeah, sorry. Chapter 5 is short, but we are done with Chapter 4. Chapter 4! Chapter 5 next Monday, and I have some accounts if any of you are all interested. I have a Wattpad account, which is at Tempesta771. That has different stories and kind of the story from a different point of view, so I guess, yeah. Anyway, I have a TikTok account, which is at AirdrenCraven2, no spaces, no uppercases, under the name Tempesta Braveheart. I have an Instagram account, which is under the name Tempesta Braveheart, no uppercases, no spaces, which is also, if you can't type in Tempesta Braveheart, just look up Airdren Craven. That's my Facebook. I will try to accept you if I don't know you, if you send a friend request, but if you turn out to be really kind of creepy, I'm going to block you. Because, yeah, I don't want creepy people. Even though I myself am weird and slightly creepy at times. There's varying levels, and we'll leave it at that. Anyway, that was my Facebook. I have a Snapchat account. I said that right for like the 4th week in a row. I'm so happy. Which is also under the names Airdren Craven, which has no spaces and no uppercases, and you are all watching my YouTube, which is under the name Tempesta Braveheart. So that is all of that. I have warned you not to bring your kids, and we move on to Chapter 5 for next week. So, Nectar of the Gods, which is just caffeine, I should say. Anything caffeinated is just the nectar of the gods. And my cat's being a cat, because yeah. So until then, peace out, Girl Scouts, and enjoy the mental hilarity.